And we're back with the second half of episode, what is this, 38 or 39 now? I don't know. It surprised me. Anyway, this is the second half of the episode, so go back and listen to the first part if you missed it. But yeah, here we go. Continuing on. What?
Are we back now?
Oh my God.
Are we back?
We're back. Now.
Oh, this now. Okay.
This now.
All right, we're back.
Not the last one. Where were we?
Lingered on Saturday night a lot. Let's move on to Sunday.
Saturday night was Nissi's, right? Okay. Yeah. And then, Sunday was Cody Qualls. Was that an album release party?
That was the album release party.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So Cody Qualls put on an album called Colorado. It also has the song Colorado on it. And that album came out Sunday, the 6th. So we've got printed CDs and the whole thing. We'll have to show it to you. The art is actually pretty good.
It's right there. It's under the pink envelope.
Here we go.
For those of you watching on YouTube, there's the front. Really nice photo of Colorado. And there's the back.
Yeah, and he's got the,
that's cool.
It's actually got a fold and liner notes and stuff. He went all out on
really
that.
Good photography. Scott Melanson
cool.
did the photography, at least on the back. The front was by somebody else. It was a graphic artist.
There's a little double exposure. Oh, let me just throw that. Little double exposure on the back, so the scenery is kind of going onto your clothing and everything. Yeah, really cool.
Yeah. Anyway, so Cody Qualls CD release show.
Lots of people involved in that show. What a production! Oh my gosh!
I would say a pretty insanely complicated production. So we've got the main band. Which is you on bass, me on guitar, Stax is on keys, Greg Tan is a great drummer from Louisville, and then Cody, of course, is up front, and we've got 3 backup singers that are performance high students, and then there's also the choir that Cody teaches, and he brings up a choir
which is maybe 10 people or so.
There was at least 20. Yeah, it was at least 20, if not more.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Add that to the stage.
Yeah, and they come out for a few songs a set, maybe 2 or 3 a set. And then he's also got both he calls it Fam Jam dancers. He has also a dance class, and so he has the dancers from his dance class come up and they perform for a few songs, and then also...
And that's maybe 6 people?
Maybe 6 people, 10, I don't know. Yeah. And then also he had professional dancers that were coming on stage.
There was 4 of those, I think.
4 of those for different parts of the song and dancing with him and behind him, kind of pop star style, kind of choreographed a little bit. So
and then also Hazel Miller and Josh Blackburn.
Yeah, right. So Hazel,
and Mateo.
And Mateo from Global Sound featuring on a couple songs. Josh featuring on a couple songs. We had him play guitar on some songs, just jam out with us on some songs that he hadn't rehearsed. But Josh is more than capable of that. And then Hazel, of course, did her part on Colorado.
And then Cody's kids came up and sang backups.
And Cody's kids come up
song.
and sing, and
so it's like 50 people.
It really might be 50 people involved. And for whatever reason, we showed up, and for whatever reason, the sound person had not gotten a stage plot or any of the stage notes, so they didn't know that anything other than a 4 or 5 piece band was showing up. Wow. Like I walked up and saw where the mics were, and I was like, you didn't get a stage plot, did you? Because and then so we had to start from scratch and just be like, all right, let's, and unfortunately, Rachel, thanks Rachel, she was by herself too. It wasn't 2 people. Usually on Friday and Saturday there's 2 people, but it was just her. And so she had to set all that stuff up, and I was basically running around like crazy until showtime, and I had to kind of give her notes on the set list of this happens here, this happens there, this song these guys are featuring, this song these guys are featuring. You guys got it done with plenty of time to spare because we were able to run
full or half songs of like 10 different songs.
That is true. We did run a lot of
stuff
stuff at rehearsal, and we were able to get Chipotle. This podcast is sponsored by Chipotle because it's the only thing I want to eat right now.
Try the new chicken al pastor.
It's so good. I had it.
Wow, this turned into a real plug.
Yeah.
No, we at Nissi's, there's a Chipotle that's just across the parking lot. It's just easy walking distance. So Saturday before the Petty Nick show, we walked over and had dinner and hung out. And it's always great to just like have dinner and hang out with those guys. And then Sunday, I didn't have time, but you guys went over and got Chipotle and
so good,
so good.
But anyway, the show went so well. I mean,
it really did. There was not a single hiccup.
No.
And I was playing, but I was also stagehanding because like I didn't want to leave like empty mics like standing up, so I was like moving like the choir mic off to the side and moving the feature vocalist mics out and back for the different things. Just because nothing looks worse than just empty mics sitting up at the front of the stage, especially if he was going to have dancers and the whole thing. I was like, that would look so dumb to have all this show and then just these empty mics standing there.
Yeah.
And
I loved playing Unstoppable. That was the first time we played that live.
Yeah.
It's a rocker. It's kind of, to me, it feels a little bit like Imagine Dragons.
It is very Imagine Dragons.
And I get to put a fuzz and an octave on the bass.
Yeah, you're playing with a lot of effects.
I mean, an octave and a fuzz at the same time just makes it sound like thunder in a bad way.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really fun to like have that growl.
Yeah.
Just let it. And I was proud of myself. I hit a riff in Levitating that I've been working on for like 6 months.
Right.
A little thing into the second verse or second chorus.
Right.
Second chorus. Yeah, so that practice pays off. Like I'm sure you're sick of hearing me practice Levitating, because like I could play the song, but I'm trying to get some of those little riffs down now.
Because it does have a cool live bass line. It's not programmed on that.
Anyway, just
are you also doing any singing or just bass playing?
Yeah, okay. I don't do much backup singing because it tends to degrade the quality of my bass playing.
Okay.
And it's interesting because I used to sing lead and play bass.
Okay.
But I think there were two things that made that easier. One is a lot of that was just really straightforward quarter and eighth notes. So it was just rhythm. And the other thing is I'm paying a lot more attention to the ends of my notes now and to tone and to excess noise.
Right.
And the moment I start singing, I can't think about that stuff anymore.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And we talked about at least with Cody, you're often singing harmony, and that playing bass and singing harmony is harder than just singing bass.
It
is.
And
I would say playing bass and singing is probably the hardest combo, just for whatever reason. I mean, we've talked about how bass and vocals go together so much.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, I think playing bass and singing is the hardest, but playing bass and then singing harmony.
Something like... to me, it feels like playing drums. Like when you're learning to play something new on drums and you're trying to like get all your limbs to do different things.
Right.
You can literally feel the neurons like trying to create new connections.
Right.
That's what it feels like to me to sing harmony and play bass. It is not like just like, oh, I got this part, now I'm going to throw a harmony on top of it. It's like learning the song over again in a different way.
Right.
It's like 3 times the work than just one of those things alone. But I do sing, I sing a duet with Cody when Amanda Hawkins isn't featuring. I sing kind of a ballad with him.
Yeah.
And I got a new student from that, apparently.
Okay.
Someone saw me sing at the show and contacted Performance High, and I have a new student.
Wow.
So
and Cody's draw for that was amazing too. Speaking of people,
it was a full house.
It was a full house. I think at least 300 technically
which
sold
is
out.
Amazing for an individual local original
for
artist.
A local original solo artist to be able to pull 300 people, even for a record release, is like it's
impressive.
It's not many people around that are able to do that. You know, so congrats to Cody there. Gosh, I just felt like the show went great. I feel like all the moments we planned really landed.
I moved around a little bit more than I have in the past.
We did some good stuff moving together. I will say, I don't think Petty Nicks has any of these, but we did notice there were a couple places where songs have these big emotional crescendos, and then there's kind of like a quiet outro. One of them, it's just a piano outro, and the other one, it's like a piano and vocal, the band's jamming and going, full on 11, and then it drops down, and the song ends with this quiet, tender piano vocal. And we found that those quiet outro things just stomped on the applause both times. That like the big part of the song ended and people were like, yeah, and then it kept going and they were like,
I can't clap right now. Yeah,
sorry.
A weird place to put the audience.
One of them, I felt the embarrassment from the crowd that they clapped. You know what I mean? Like they were embarrassed that they might have ruined the song because they thought it was over, but it wasn't over. And you could just feel people be like, oh no, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And then they did the little outro and they were like, and then people clapped, but it was still that's one thing we need to be very aware of live is not having those little almost false endings because it just, they want to clap at the end of that big climactic part. They don't want to then wait 8 quiet bars to then clap. It's just a different. I on the record absolutely do those things. Live, we just need to remember to cut those. And like I said, I don't think Petty Nicks has any of those moments where it fakes people out. I mean, I say it. I've probably said it on the podcast a ton because I say it literally multiple times a week. Like I find that the number one thing, if a crowd doesn't respond huge, like in a big way, it's probably because they were confused and weren't really sure the song was over.
Right.
That is probably more than them not thinking your band is good. It's that they weren't really sure it was over. And so you get that weird, scattered applause where one person kind of starts and then it slowly starts and there's a little bit of applause. But that was because they weren't really sure the song was over,
Yeah. No, that's super fair.
Yeah. Which is another thing you do naturally really well. Like we never talked about any of this in Petty Nicks, but you do a great job of physically telegraphing the ends. I think that's one of the things that works with Petty Nicks is all of us are good about doing something physical where you're showing that this is the end.
Oh yeah.
Throwing the guitar up, all of those things you might do at an end, you're showing people this is the end, not just what they hear, but or you'll end it and you kind of bend down or you bail and walk back to the back. There's all those physical ways that you show people nope, we're done.
Yeah.
And I think that helps a lot, because just when they're sure that this is the time to clap.
Right.
Yeah, people don't want to stand out in a crowd a lot of times. They want
it's a weird
They
thing.
want to be right,
Yeah.
with people around them.
You have this weird thing where you don't want to embarrass yourself.
Yeah.
When you're in a crowd by clapping at the wrong time or cheering at the wrong time. So everybody's kind of got this weird, they're kind of nervous almost watching each other, Anyway, that I was just saying, I think we've always done that really well, even though we never talked about any of it. So anyway, that was Sunday, which don't get me wrong, amazing show. I feel like we really blew people.
Oh, and you said Chris Kresge gave a great review on Facebook.
Chris Kresge gave just a really glowing review.
Thanks for coming, Chris.
Thanks for coming, Chris.
Assuming he listened to
Chris
this
is not going to ever
sure he's not gonna hear that.
or hear this. Especially not at this point.
What do you mean?
Oh, we're just an hour in.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway, Chris Kresge, huge Colorado music scene guy, and he was nice enough to come. And I saw a rave review that he gave on Facebook. He just, seemed to think it was a really good show. And so that was always amazing to hear. And then...
then that was Sunday. So then Monday was last night.
Monday was last night. And we went to see Foals, which we already said.
Got the T-shirt.
And yeah.
Nice.
And it at the Mission Ballroom, which, again, I know I said it briefly, that has got to be the best music venue I've ever been to in my entire
I've yet
life.
to get down there. I got to get to a show.
Highly recommend it because the way they've set it up, and I think, too, they don't oversell it. You know what I mean? Like they could get more people in there than they do. The result being there's these big wide wings on the sides. You know, there's all the area in front of the stage where you would want to be, and then there's these big wide wings on the side that like lets a lot of the like pressure off the audience. So you're not crammed in. So like I was saying, we were practically right on the barricade.
Yeah, we were one person off the barricade.
One person off the barricade, but then you could easily like leave the crowd, go to the bathroom, and then walk back to your spot.
It's so easy to get in and out. And if you didn't want to be as densely packed as up at the front, which wasn't that dense, people were not pushing.
Yeah.
You could, exit out 5 steps out, walk 20 feet back, and then get back into the crowd. It just got much less dense as it went back. So you could easily find a place to be that felt good to you.
And I think that's because they don't oversell it. And there's so much extra room on the sides.
Yeah.
It's not like prime, like watching the band, but it's just room so people don't push because they don't feel like they need to.
Yeah.
And like everyone's really polite. There's enough room that everybody's really like polite about like, oh yeah, let me get out of your way. Let me get back to your spot because of like, it's not like that. We're all crammed in and we're all kind of fighting for the good spot.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's lots of good spots.
It's just,
and then you went and got a second beer and you were back in like 3 minutes.
It took, because they've also have like, I don't know, 20, 30 like bar stations and they're all spread out, really spread out. So going and getting a drink is like, you just walk right up. There's not even a line. Yeah. This is a just sold out 2,000 people show. And like, there's not lines for concessions because they've just designed it like amazingly well.
It sounds like you've also described the most Denver venue too, of people like letting people back into
their
spots at the front. Like, come on in.
Yeah.
It's like an amazing thing that we do have. But I had the same experience at the show I went to at the Marquee, which is a much smaller venue, but there's like, there's barricades and weird beams. Just kind of the construction of the building is kind of, I don't know if it was, it's not a venue.
They probably didn't.
Venue,
no.
I mean, it was something.
It was something, yes. So they've got those support beams that are just right in the middle of the crowd.
It feels like a comedy club. Like when you're in there, like they should do comedy shows in there because it feels like, what's that? Comedy Works or something kind of has like a similar vibe to it inside. But anyway, I had a similar experience of like, the bar is literally right behind me. I can see it, but I'm like up against like this barricade, so I have to like leave and go around to get to the bar. And then I could just turn and see Veronica just like sitting there, and then grab our drinks or whatever. And everyone's just like, "Oh yeah, come on in," and they help you get back. To it's a much smaller room and venue, but it's just like that experience is so Denver of like, come on in and you meet the people around your table and you're all hanging out. And it's great.
Yeah, it's really it totally is because a lot of places, those dense shows where it's packed. Like if you leave the front, too bad you're not getting back. Like people are like, no, you left.
They won't even look at you.
Yeah, exactly.
That guy doesn't exist.
And here everybody's like, oh. Hey, so sorry I bumped you. I mean, I know we're
let me buy you a drink
in a crowded, but like, oh man, sorry. It's so nice.
Who did you see there?
I saw Ginger Root. It's this new, it's this newer. Well, I guess not newer, but newer to me. Act out of, I think they're just based in California, and they're on tour right now. They kind of came through, this is like their second leg of tour, and I just discovered them actually like during the pandemic or just coming out of it. I think it's funny, I wanted to bring it up as like an instance of a band. It's the only band I know of that I like am really into that kind of blew up from an algorithm kind of really helping them out, and it's just like, I mean, they're talented, they deserve everything that's coming to them, but it's just crazy to see like Spotify. Like we're talking before the show with everybody in the crowd, like, hey, how'd you hear about these guys? It's crazy. This is sold out. Like, what's going on? And they're just like, oh yeah, like Spotify just recommended them to me, and so I checked them out, and then like YouTube recommended this video to me based on what I listened to, and that's how I found them, was through a YouTube algorithm recommended video, and I watched it for their song called Loretta, which is probably like their biggest track right now as far as gaining notoriety. And so it's crazy to see that they're able to come in. I mean, the Marquee is not a massive venue, but to sell that out as a California band off of, pushes from YouTube and Spotify. I mean, it's nuts.
Totally
that
amazing.
Stuff's coming up. Like
it's such a good example of how playlists and recommended like whatever the algorithm stuff. That's the new radio.
Yeah,
that's what radio used to do for people, and now that no one listens to radio, that's And I'm sorry, I know we have
I listen to radio all the time.
A big part of our fan base is our DJs, radio DJs. So sorry, guys.
Well, even they've got the Spotify. Like they're doing the DJ stuff. It's like everybody that makes a playlist on Spotify is like their own DJ now. You're independent curating all these things, and so it's fascinating to see that. Like I forgot where I was going with that. I just had a train of thought completely go away. But it's fascinating to see Spotify. I guess like it's making all these different independent curations based on just I could make one and people could all of a sudden find it, and I could change the way that people listen to music.
You absolutely could,
that.
and
that's
one of the things that I've worked on with a few people is tracking down some of those playlists, and which sometimes have hundreds of thousands of subscribers. YouTube playlists and Spotify playlists, and finding the people who made it and submitting directly to those people, because you can do that now.
Yeah.
And you're right that some of those people are huge tastemakers.
Right.
And they just made a playlist that they really like, and they kept curating it and kept working on it. And now they're like extremely influential,
Well, just to say from the show, just another moment I wanted to highlight is they're really funny guys on stage. They've got a great stage presence. He kind of, the main guy who plays keyboards and singing, he kind of has this like, he's very intentionally awkward to the point of like where it's no longer funny, but then it becomes like he brings you in with the awkwardness. Like it's so good. He goes past the point of like uncomfortableness that now you feel like you're his best friend. I mean, it's incredible.
That's amazing. Yeah,
it's like the opposite of a front man. Like he's very anti. Like I don't know. He just doesn't seem like he's coming across like you guys are ready for the next song. That's just not his persona. He's got a very. But there's a part of the show where he's got like fake sponsors that he's kind of thanking, and like it's kind of funny. You guys do that with the podcast a little bit, but he has like video production going on behind him in between certain songs of like a fake sponsor, and then it ties into the next song. But he did something at the very end that was just funny, that recognizing that how this is kind of happening for him in part. He's like, wait, we got a real sponsor to actually thank. Firstly, you guys for coming out and supporting us, but secondly, the YouTube algorithm. And then they started playing that song that kind of like blew him up. I just thought it's funny, like everyone's aware of like how this is happening. So it's just funny that was part of the show too. Just like, hey, I want to thank YouTube for kind of helping us get here. It's like it's definitely how I found out about him. So
that is
wild.
Yeah, that's really. It's kind of cool of them to acknowledge that too.
I think so too.
Yeah, that is wild though. I mean, that's a lot bigger than it seems. I mean, headlining, pulling in 300 or 400 people.
Yeah,
that's it takes a lot to get to that point.
Yeah, it really does.
That's really not a small thing. Well, we
haven't talked about the full show. We talked about the Mission Ballroom.
Oh yeah, right. So, what was your takeaway? What did you? I'm still trying to make takeaways a thing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we won't name any names, but both of us really disliked the front person of one of the openers. And it was interesting. It was like a personal, visceral reaction to the personality.
I don't know that this was it, but it's sort of going back to what you were saying about the lead singer of Ginger Root being super awkward and having this persona of making that. And it kind of goes back to that thing of like, well, you said it. If some people, it's kind of real to be like the, hey, rah, rah, rah. And other people, it's not real and you're faking it, and there's just something off-putting about it. I don't know for sure that was what was...
Oh, he wasn't being rah-rah at all.
Well,
right?
It was kind of... He did do the thing that we've decided we don't like, which...
Oh.
He said, hey, Denver, or whatever, like...
Before they'd played a
Before
single
they
note.
even played a single note, he was like,
Huh.
Denver, Colorado. And
I love you guys so much.
You know, and it was
We're like, well, we
I
haven't
don't
clapped for you yet. But
Yeah, and of course
never brought him
everyone
in?
claps
Yeah.
because you named their geographical location.
Yep.
Yeah, so I don't know. Yeah, definitely too much Denver talk.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Too much Denver talk.
Too much Denver
it
talk.
wasn't just that. For me, the way I described it to you is it felt like the kind of person who believes that effort is not necessary and that everything will come to them with no work. It was like the laziest front manning job I've ever seen. Like there was no energy put out. It was kind of like, yeah, I'm cool. What am I going to say?
Yeah,
Here
there
we
was
are.
a lot of that.
Here we are. I don't know.
So it's almost like
thanks
their
for having
persona
us.
was not caring in a way,
Yeah,
or like
in a way that is like, I'm super cool. I don't even have to care.
Right. It sort of wasn't the
Okay.
war on drugs thing where it was just
Right.
like we're just playing the songs and we're in it. And,
And
you know,
I think it has a lot more to do with us than with them.
Right,
Like
right.
it was you and me, how we interact with people and the kind of people that we like.
Right, right.
It was like both of us had the same reaction to this. Like if we'd met this person in a room,
Right.
personally,
It would have been the same.
It would have been the same.
Yeah.
And so it's, I mean, I'm sitting here criticizing, but it just reflects a lot more on your and my personality
right.
than on them.
And you know, there's nothing wrong with not everything being for everybody.
exactly.
And it shouldn't be. You know what? I mean, I say that all the time too. I mean, there should be stuff about your band or your music that a certain amount of people are going to literally dislike. Like you can't have the part that people like without having enough, enough, I don't know, enough of a quality that people can also dislike it. Like it has to have kind of both.
Yeah,
you
it has
know?
to stand out in some way.
It has to stand out enough that some people go, that is not for me.
Yeah.
Did y'all dig the music that they were playing, or did the persona kind of act as a barrier for you to even have a chance of enjoying
No,
it?
we did not dig the music either. For me, I kept turning to Justin being like, I'm hearing notes and I'm hearing rhythms, but this doesn't feel like music to me. Maybe the way that like the
Interesting.
first people who heard jazz were like, whoa, what is this? I don't know.
And there were kind of a lot of weird harmonies, not vocal harmonies, but like the chords.
There was a lot of dissonance.
It was very dissonant. It was like pop music, but it was, and don't get me wrong, intentionally dissonant.
Oh yeah.
But just really like challenging chords, like some flat nines and like some like just, and it
And
just kind
riffs that overlapped in ways that didn't harmonize.
Right. So they'd be bad notes in between while they, but it was all seemed very on purpose, but very like, yeah, just also was not in a pleasing way. Not in a, like, I mean, like Steely Dan or something has really complicated chord changes, but they aren't intended to be, I don't know. It was sort of all hard to follow.
At least for us not being familiar with the music.
Not being, and to be fair, there were clearly a lot of people that were there to see that band and they were loving it. So clearly it works for some people. We were just surprised at how much it didn't for us.
Yeah.
Although they were using a microphone I've never seen someone use on a hi-hat before, and I thought that was interesting. You might have seen it. It's the EV 635A, and it looks very old. I'll show it to you online. It actually was a mic that was intended for interviewers and the on location news guys, but then they wound up getting used in studios a lot because they don't have any proximity effect.
Okay.
So you can sing right on them, and they don't get bassy and boomy for recording. I'll show it to you.
Yeah.
But I'd never seen one on a hi-hat before. I was like,
Interesting.
That's weird.
I think that was their choice. I mean, I guess.
Oh, it was clearly a really, really conscious choice. Yeah.
Okay.
But it sounded good. I mean, their sound guy was great. Another time there was one song where one of the keyboard, it was like a utility Brian Stax guy, and he, and their Brian Stax picked up a trumpet and started playing, and just he was sort of just like playing one note and kind of doing that trill thing. And you couldn't even really hear it that well where we were standing. And yet everyone around us was just like, yeah. So one more time, the concept
of horns.
The concept of horns seems to always work for people.
I remember hearing that when you guys talking about that. I think that's such a true theory. Like, just
it's so funny. I don't know what it is that people and what's funny about it in real life, like no one is interested in horns. Like. It's so few kids that even want to be in like band or start playing trumpet or whatever. You know, it's just not something that in everyday life people are like, man, you know what I love? I love horns, man. I love brass. But somehow at a concert, if someone pulls one out, everybody's just like, oh, yeah. It's such a...
Was it always that way, or is this something you're noticing more lately?
I think I've only noticed it lately, but you know, to be fair, maybe I just never noticed before, but it's certainly lately people are just very excited that someone has pulled out a horn.
Huh.
It's sort of like the war on drugs thing where like they were just every time they'd show him on the Jumbotron, the crowd would go wild, even though you couldn't hear what he was doing.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was impressed with the tambourine player of Foals.
Of Foals? Oh
my God. They're so tight.
Unbelievable.
I mean, their stuff is so groove driven.
Right.
It's just like those songs just go. And like the 16th subdivisions are so important. At first, when I commented about the tambourine player, I thought he was doing the 16th. He was holding the tambourine like this, like up, and he was kind of shaking it back and forth like that. And I was like, man, that is some clean playing, which it was. But it turned out that the actual tick, 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 tick of the 16th was coming from a sample or something that the drummer was kicking off that you noticed.
It was really interesting because they were clearly on a click sometimes and clearly either not on a click or the click was speeding up. So there were times when the band was intentionally speeding up through a song, but other places you could tell they were so rock solid. They were definitely on a click. And then other times they were playing to loops, and then sometimes they weren't. So it seemed very mixed up how they did it because there were actually maybe 3 or 4 songs where the drummer was, and he just had a pad that would stop and start this percussion loop or whatever it was. And then there was a stop in the song and he'd hit it and shut it off and then start it again. And then other songs, they didn't do any of that. So it wasn't like their whole show was loop based. And one of the songs, I think it seemed to me like it was a backing track. It seemed like stuff was happening but it wasn't like they were all on tracks or all to loops or all clicked. It was like they were kind of doing everything, you know, which I thought was really interesting.
Let's see. We had a couple of observations. Let's see. So at the end of the show, like after they came back from encore break, they did a lot more jammy stuff. They spent a lot of time just letting stuff grow and build, and it was fun. And they were whipping the audience into a frenzy, going from single time to double time, and then what would you call doubling double time? Quadruple time? I mean,
I don't know.
I mean, the end of Mountain at My Gate or whatever. Because it goes from cat to cat to like it just like made everybody go wild. The whole place was up and down. So there was a lot of that expansiveness after the encore or in the encore. But earlier they played a couple of their hits that I love so much, like Got My Number, and
I can't remember what titles. I don't.
But a couple of them that are their big hits, and they did not extend them at all. And I was like, oh, give me more of that moment,
right?
And so we were talking on the way home about how to maybe do some things differently with Petty Nicks, like with that inspiration. Well, I can't remember exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, we did make some notes. Not important here. It was just sort of like, for example, like they would, even in some of the jammier things, like they do the first chorus and then he would start singing the second verse right after the first chorus, like you would on the record, the record version. And it's like you could just feel in the room, like you could have just let the groove go and opened the song up a little bit, and people would have like loved that a moment to like let it soak in. And like it's just in general throughout the show, like he'd come up to the front and play guitar, and people would just start going nuts. But then he would just do it for like 3 seconds, and then he'd turn and walk away, and people would be like, "Oh, I guess it's yeah." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or he would like jump up and down for a second, and the crowd would start jumping, but he would just do it for like literally 2 seconds, and then he would stop, and then the crowd would kind of like stop. So it was like there were just all these places they could have, doubled up guitar solos.
Yeah.
He does a lot of guitar solos. They're not necessarily improv guitar solos. They're like melodic, worked out solos. But like you could have easily done that solo 2 or 4 times live instead of just the one short time like it is on the record, because people were getting super into it, but then it would just be over so fast that it was kind of. I mean, don't get me wrong. People were thrilled, and by the end, they were going nuts. But it was like I felt like they could have been going that much crazy like way earlier in the show if they just kind of broken some stuff out. And
so Justin offers his consulting services to Foals.
I would never. They're
just kidding.
No. They're unbelievable. And maybe just seeing the one show, maybe there's really good reasons for why they do things. But that one night we saw it, that's what I was feeling, was that just the crowd they wanted to go nuts on certain things, but it would just go right past them or just move on, or like, and even us standing there was like, I kind of wanted to go nuts on that song, but I didn't really get a chance to. So that's one thing I think we do well.
Oh yeah.
Is kind of we always say break open a song. And I think we do a good job of breaking open the ones that should. I mean, obviously you shouldn't do it every single song, but there are songs where it's like, you stretch it out, let people enjoy it. There's no...
Yeah.
I mean, I learned that partially playing in Jacksonville beach bars, where if you lost the crowd, you lost them for the whole night, because then everybody that came in would be like, oh, it's dead in here, let's go on to the next place. Because they would have these strips of like 4 or 8 bars literally on like 2 blocks. And then you drive a mile down the beach and there's another set of like 2 blocks where there's 4 or 8 bars. And so people would go bar hopping, you just go to the place and walk around. And if you lost your crowd, you lost them for the whole night. So very often we'd just be like, if you had them on a song, you'd just be like, just keep it going, go to a guitar solo, come back, do verse and chorus again, do chorus again, whatever. And so sometimes we would wind up playing songs for like 10 minutes, because it's like, well, but if you've got them and they're dancing, don't stop until you start seeing them. Okay, they're starting to lose interest, like pull it and like go to the next thing, know. But you got to kind of like, because if you've got them, don't let them go.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway,
you got to be observant. Like that's so. When I realized that too, of like the crowd is, let them dictate what you're doing just as much as you're controlling their enjoyment of something. Because it really is. It just makes it so much more alive. Of a thing.
It is that back and forth.
Yeah.
It is that back and forth, and that's when you are able to get a crowd to just really explode, is when you're kind of you're taking their cues too.
Yeah. And the next level is making them realize that they're giving you cues. Like that's the next level of like, oh, now I know I can control, so that's fun too when you have them in that spot.
Yeah.
Like, they know that they're dictating some things, so it's kind of fun to play with.
Neat.
Yeah, we should work on that.
Yeah,
we should work on that. Well, guys, it's been
this is a long one here.
Huge week,
An hour and a half. Wow.
Wow. Thanks for hanging in there, Julian.
Ooh, so that's good. That's good.
I'm sure no one is still listening, but
I tuned out like hours ago at this point. I'm just
no, I've been on autopilot as well. Julian Fulco Perron, his album is out
on the
Friday,
11th.
On the 11th.
Yep.
And it's going to be everywhere, and highly recommend it, especially if you like, classic American music. I think that's a good way to say it.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's like 60s, 70s influence, folk, classic rock. I mean, this particular album, that's the thing. I always bounce around sounds, but yeah, this particular release is definitely more of a stripped kind of folk rock, 60s, 70s feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good sounding record, I think.
Good
I'm really
classic
happy with
vibe.
it.
Yeah, and it does sound really good. You sent me a couple versions of it here and there, and it Sounds amazing. Does not sound like it was made with computers, which I give you a lot of credit for. So check out Julian and check out Chipotle.
Check out Chipotle.
This podcast is sponsored by Performance High Voice and Music Studio
Check
and
out Performance High.
Chipotle.
and the concept of brass. Anyway, we're punchy. Time to call it.
Get a sticker. All right. Thank you, Julian, for coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much, man.
See you guys.
Yeah, thank you. All right. See ya.